Hello everyone, my name is Fajar Munichputranto. I will present my thesis entitled The Influence of Emotional Factors, Knowledge and Facilities Toward Waste Separation using Extended Theory of Plant Behavior. To begin, the study is motivated by the increasing waste problem globally and even more in Indonesia. Waste crises in major cities have become increasingly common in recent years due to limited waste capacity and landfill availability, reflecting the growing pressure on existing waste management systems. Data indicate that waste generation in major urban cities in Java is very high, while the handling rate remains very low. For example, Jabodetabek generates more than 21,000 tons of waste per day, but the handling rate is only 2.6% in 2025. More broadly, across 540 cities in Indonesia, the average waste handling rate is still below 1%. Thus, almost 100% of daily waste is being dumped straight to the landfill. This shows that waste management performance is still far from sufficient. Building from this condition, waste separation at source become essential to improve waste handling in further processes, such as recycling and waste-to-energy production. However, waste separation is a behavioral issue because it requires residents to change their daily waste management practices. Therefore, social marketing can be useful to support pro-environmental behavior by designing more effective interventions. In addition, the theory of learned behavior, which examines attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control toward intention and behavior, is suitable for this study because it helps explain how people form intention and how this intention may translate into actual waste separation behavior. Based on the background, the main phenomenon gap is in that Indonesia's national waste handling rate was only 24.6% in 2025, despite the Indonesia's Free of Waste 2025 agenda. In terms of research gap, TBP-based studies have widely examined the classical factors such as attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control, but limited evidence explain the role of emotional factors, cognitive, and contextual factors that also drive waste separation behavior. Therefore, the study focuses on hope and guilt as emotional factors, knowledge as a cognitive factor, and satisfaction with local facilities as a contextual factor. In general, the study asks whether attitude, subjective norm, perceived behavioral control, hope, guilt, and knowledge affect intention to separate waste, whether intention affects actual behavior, and whether satisfaction with local facilities strengthens the relationship between intention and behavior. In line with those research questions, the research objectives are presented on the slide. To highlight the practical relevance of this research, this slide shows the benefit and scope of the study. For practitioners such as waste technology and management services, property developers, and residential area managers, the result can help design better products, services, and facilities. For government and policymakers, the findings can support more effective programs, public service announcements, and future interventions. Academically, the study contributes empirical evidence on waste separation behavior in Indonesia. The scope of the study is a household-level waste separation among Gen Z and millennial residents in the urban cities in Java Island. To literature review, this slide presents the key construct used in the study. The first group consists of the classical variables from the theory of planned behavior. Following Athens TPP, intention is shaped by attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control. In this context, attitude refers to how positively or negatively residents evaluate waste separation and whether they believe it is beneficial. Subjective norm refers to the social influence that comes from surrounding people. Meanwhile, perceived behavioral control refers to residents' perception on how easy or difficult it is to separate waste. In addition to the original TPP variables, this study extends the model by including emotional factors, knowledge, and satisfaction with local facilities. For emotional factors, the study refers to previous research showing that hope can encourage pro-environmental intention, while guilt can motivate people to avoid environmentally harmful behavior. Knowledge is included because cognitive understanding of environmental issues and risk categories may support behavioral intention. And finally, satisfaction with local facilities is included because previous waste separation studies shows that local facilities condition can influence whether residents were able to translate intention into actual behavior. Moving to the endogenous variables, intention reflects on how strongly a person plans or is motivated to perform a behavior. Meanwhile, behavior refers to the actual action, which in the study is household waste separation, meaning separating waste into different components at the household level. The intention behavior gap is important because people may intend to separate waste, but may not consistently do it. Based on this definition, we come to the hypothesis development. The first four hypotheses follow the classical TDD model, where attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control are expected to influence intention, and intention is expected to influence waste separation behavior. These hypotheses are supported by previous studies of waste separation in different countries. The next hypothesis extends the 3BV model by adding emotional, cognitive, and contextual factors. Hope, guilt, and knowledge are expected to influence intention, while satisfaction with local facilities is tested as a moderator between intention and actual separation behavior. In short, the study examines whether emotion and knowledge can strengthen intention and whether facilities can help translate intention into behavior. Therefore, the conceptual framework is shown on the slide. This model is adapted from the theory of planned behavior, as in 1991, by incorporating emotional factor from Cheng et al. 2024, knowledge from Pan and Liu 2024, and satisfaction with local facilities from Stufa and Erickson 2017 as extended variables. This slide shows the operational definition for attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control. In general, these indicators measure whether respondents perceive waste separation as useful, socially expected, and manageable in daily life. Moving on, hope captures positive expectation that waste management efforts can be successful. Guilt captures negative feelings when respondents do not separate waste. Intention captures the willingness to sort the waste in the near future. Turning to knowledge, it was measured objectively using a quiz-based assessment where respondents matched waste items with correct categories. Waste separation behavior was measured through self-reported waste separation practices. Lastly, the facility construct refers to satisfaction with local facilities, including adequacy, availability, and collection organization. The study used a quantitative approach with PLSTM using SmartPLS, SPSS, and Microsoft Excel. The sampling method was purposive and non-probability sampling. Respondents had to be at least 18 years old, live in selected agglomeration cities in Java, and have separated waste at least once. This study aimed to Gen Z and Millennial as these two generations represent the largest population groups in Indonesia. The questionnaire used in 5-point Likert scale except for knowledge, which used quiz-based scoring. The survey obtained 372 valid respondents from the sample consisted of 57% Gen Z and 43% millennials. Most respondents live in landed house and the largest domicile group was Jabodetabek. The sample was also dominated by respondents with higher education degree. The descriptive statistics are shown on the slide. Overall, attitude was the highest construct indicating very positive evaluation towards waste separation. Interestingly, intention was around 4, while behavior was slightly lower at 3.7. This suggests that respondents generally intended to separate waste, but the actual behavior was lower than intention. Satisfaction with local facilities was only 2.9, indicating a more moderate perception. The slide presents the measurement model evaluation. Most indicators met the recommended loading threshold. Hope indicator 1 was removed because the loading was below the threshold, especially in the millennial subsample. After removal, all construct met reliability and convergentiality criteria with compass alpha and complete reliability above 0.7 and AV above 0.5. For the knowledge quiz, the initial reliability was slightly below the recommended threshold. The item used bandages. It did not align well with the overall knowledge measurement, possibly because respondents interpreted it ambiguously as either residual waste or hazardous waste. Therefore, this item was removed and the reliability improved to above 0.7. For discriminant validity tests, the Fortner Larker and SDMP criterion were met across combined sample Gen Z and millennial. Moving on, the model can explain about 45% for both intention and behavior. The model has no multiclinarity problem and has predictive relevance. The hypothesis testing result shows that attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavior control, hope, and guilt significantly influence intention. Intention also significantly influence behavior. However, knowledge did not significantly influence intention. Satisfaction with local facilities also did not significantly moderate intention-behavioral relationship. However, facilities had a significant direct effect on behavior, which is important for the discussion. This hypothesis attitude positively and significantly influence intention. This finding is consistent with previous waste separation in recycling studies, which found altitude as an important predictor of intention and behavior. For the second hypothesis, subjective norms also positively and significantly influence intention. This indicates the social expectation from family, friends, and community still matter in encouraging intention. Next, perceived behavioral control significantly influence intention. This suggests that perceived ability and ease still contribute to intention. This is aligned with TBB-based way studies showing that perceived control can support intention when residents feel capable of performing the behavior. For the fourth hypothesis, intention significantly influences behavior. This confirms that intention remains a central predictor of actual waste separation behavior. The fifth hypothesis shows that hope significantly influences intention. This means that when respondents feel optimistic that waste problems can be solved, they are more likely to intend to separate waste. This is consistent with studies on pro-environmental behavior showing that hope can motivate people to take environmental action. Guilt also significantly influences intention. Respondents who feel guilty or remorseful when disposing of waste without separation tend to show stronger intention to separate waste. This supports previous that anticipated guilt can encourage recycling or waste separation intention by making people want to avoid environmentally responsible behavior. Moving on, knowledge had a positive but non-significant effect on intention. This may indicate that knowing how to classify waste does not automatically create the motivation to separate waste. Another possible explanation is that knowledge was measured objectively, while previous studies often found stronger effects when knowledge was measured subjectively. In addition, the sample had a relatively high educational background, which may have reduced variation in knowledge scores. For the last hypothesis, facilities did not significantly moderate the intention-behavior relationship. However, as part of the two stages evaluation and moderation effect, facilities had a significant direct effect on behavior. This is consistent with the previous waste separation studies, showing that facilities and local conditions can directly support actual behavior, meaning that facilities may function more as a direct behavioral enabler rather than as a moderator. The mediation result shows that intention remains a central mechanism in explaining waste separation behavior as depicted on the slide. The multi-group analysis shows intention to behavior was stronger among Gen Z, while the effect of facilities on behavior was stronger among millennials. This suggests that Gen Z behavior is more intention-driven, while millennial behavior may depend more on contextual support, such as facilities. By adding variables, this model comparison shows extended TPP improves explanatory power of the model. The conclusion is shown on the slide while I'm going to highlight the theoretical contribution. The study contributes to the development of the TPP by extending the model with emotional, cognitive, and contextual factors in the context of household waste separation. The inclusion of hope and guilt shows that emotional factors can complement the rational components of TPP in explaining waste separation intention. The study also contributes by using objective knowledge measurement and positioning for satisfaction with local facilities as a contextual factor related to the actual behavior. In addition, the comparison between Gen Z and millennials provides further insight into how waste separation intention and behavior may differ across generation groups. Based on the findings, several implications might be suggested for the actors. First, local governments and public communication agencies can strengthen attitudes by communicating the practical value of waste separation. Second, subjective norms can be strengthened through family, neighborhood, and community-based routines because social expectations from close groups still influence residents' intention. Third, perceived behavioral control can be improved by making waste separation easier. Local government may provide free and standardized household sorting bins. Fourth, campaigns should not only provide information but also use emotional appeals. Hope-based messages can show visible collective outcomes such as cleaner neighborhoods and successful recycling stories. While fifth, constructive guilt-based messages can highlight the consequences of mixed waste. Sixth, local governments and waste operators should give assurance that separated waste will not be mixed again during collection or processing. Seven, waste tech providers can develop user-oriented kitchen waste separation solutions because intention to separate kitchen was relatively high, but reported organic waste separation behavior was low. In an empirical study, this research has several limitations. First, it used a cross-sectional design, so it cannot fully explain the behavioral changes over time. Second, most latent variables were measured using self-reported questionnaires, which may be affected by social desirability bias. Third, the sample was dominated by the respondents with bachelor degrees or higher, which may have contributed to relatively homogeneous knowledge scores. Future studies can use longitudinal designs, observational data, more comprehensive knowledge measurements, experimental methods testing, and specific research settings such as schools, offices, tourist attractions, and residential areas. are shown on the slides. That concludes my presentations. Thank you very much for your attention.